Africa is ready for growth. There's a lot of opportunities. And so those who are interested in looking at the region should not shy away from it. There are a lot of insurance companies that have been around for years. It's not a new phenomenon. It's the InsurTechs that are new, but there are insurance companies that have been around for over 100 years. And most of them are partnering up with InsurTech. So there's a lot of learning from these legacy institutions for the new guys to be able to develop products that really will be ready for the future. I'm Festus Amoyaw, all the way from Accra, Ghana, and this is the future of insurance.
Festus, it's great to sit down with you. I've been excited to do this and to start another season with this conversation in particular. So thank you for making some time all the way from Ghana to do this interview.
And thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
So I do want to hear about your business, about the community that you're building in Ghana around InsurTech, and more broadly, some of the things going on in the African continent, in the InsurTech scene that I would love people to be more aware of. But before that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm Festus Amoyaw. I started my career in the banking industry and then moved into the venture capital private equity space, been there for about 15 years, worked with various institutions such as the World Bank, Women's World Banking, and Acumen Incorporated, all are institutions based in the United States. And about 3 years ago, I started digging a bit deep into the whole issues of safety net for a lot of people in Africa. And one of the areas that caught my attention is insurance, pension, and investment. So typically in Africa, you don't get a lot of people who work and put money away through life insurance, or they have enough pensions. And so it became something that I started looking into it. In Africa, if you look at insurance penetration, it's way, way below compared to other countries. So we're talking about somewhere 2% across Africa. In some countries like South Africa, it's quite high. And probably in Morocco is also high, but across the rest of sub-Saharan Africa is really low. Most countries are somewhere around 1% to GDP. And so people have not uptake of insurance, especially life insurance, which provide you a lot of safety nets, is not really high. And that is what I began looking into. And I found that there is a lot of opportunities in there, because traditionally life insurance is sold through individual agents, like in the United States. And that is a very difficult, process. About 60% of life insurance are sold through individuals. And there's always been some experiences that people have not found interesting. And therefore, it's beginning to be a challenge for these individuals to continue to sell life insurance, by foot or by vehicle. And especially after COVID, it's becoming a bit more challenging. And that is why I found myself within this whole space of InsurTech.
Can I ask you one question on the penetration? Is that, because you're talking about life insurance, is that just life insurance, or is it the same story in PNC as well?
It's the same in PNC. So in most African countries, I think across African countries, we don't describe, PNC as in the United States, it's described as general insurance.
Yeah, more like in the UK.
Exactly. And then we have the life insurance. Yeah. So generally it's across board. The insurance penetration is quite low.
So with that context, and I know there's a lot of differences from a general population standpoint, a consumption standpoint. One of the things I've been very focused on is it's much more mobile first. And not even smartphones, but using more traditional cell phones and flip phones and texting and phone-based payments. I think the African continent and in particular certain markets have been way advanced relative to, we still don't do much of that in the US, in the European continent, outside of now people using apps maybe. But there's some interesting differences in the markets that I think then go along with some of the insurance developments as well, no?
Absolutely, Brian, you are right. So you realize that there's been a lot of improvement, or there's been an increase in mobile money, what we call mobile money, where individuals could use their mobile phone to just transmit or conduct transactions like a typical bank. And that has really gone through the roof when it comes to most African countries. So the whole evolution of mobile money as being used as a platform to transact, started somewhere in Kenya, and it's gone viral through the various African countries. So if in Ghana, if you are looking at, most transactions are done by mobile, the mobile phone, and you can use any ordinary feature, what we call the feature phone. You don't need to have a smartphone, and you can always have a transaction being conducted on the mobile phone. Unfortunately, even though that has leapfrog all the other industries, most industries are still struggling to catch up when it comes to using mobile phone to transact business. Even in the insurance space, some of the companies are trying to do that, but there has to be some proper way of connecting the user to the insurer to ensure that there is that customer experience, and that cannot typically be found on a feature phone. A smartphone gives you something something more, and that is where I think the whole direction seems to be going, in terms of people having a better customer experience on their mobile phone if they want to interact with their insurer.
So for people watching this, they see your background, Figtech. What is your particular? I know you talked about investments and helping to support things. What is your particular focus yourself in this industry, and what is it you're trying to build?
So our focus is, to become the platform of choice for most users who want to really manage their life insurance policies. So like I mentioned earlier on, in Ghana, close to 60%, over 60% of life insurance transactions are done through individuals. And most often than not, getting access to information on policies becomes a bit of a challenge. And the insurance industry worldwide, including the United States, are far behind when it comes to digitization. So it's something that we are all working towards. And my Fig basically is a product of Figtech. That is an app that enables an individual a life insurance policy for multiple insurers. So you are able to compare the different premiums that is out there, the amount of insurance you want to take up, so the cover, etc. And with that, it enables you to continue to manage, your life insurance like a portfolio, because then you get to know whether your premium are going through on a monthly basis, because in Ghana, typically you pay premium on a month-by-month basis. So you want to know what is happening. You want to know how much cover you have. And even if you want to add any new dependent, it's easier to do that on a platform. Currently, if you want to update any information on your policy, you may have to drive to the insurer office.
You have to go in person.
So. You have to go in person, because the agent who sold the policy to you is long gone, looking for the next customer to sell a policy to.
Yeah.
So your relationship now is with the company, and the customer experience for most people has not been very, very exciting. And we want to help the industry to improve the customer experience so people can believe in life insurance. There are nuances around why people don't like life insurance, especially in Africa. We have cultural issues, we have religion also playing a strong role, because people believe God will protect them no matter what. So they don't need any, protection from an insurance company. But we want to try and break down the myth. So if people have closer access to the product and they engage with the product, it helps them to take, an informed decision. And that is what Figtech, through my Fig, is trying to do.
When you talked about the role of the agent, or the person who made the sale, it's so backwards or different to what we see in the US and Europe, where it's really hard for the insurance company to connect to the client, because the agent, they get much better new business commission. So they're interested in that, but they really want to own that relationship in perpetuity, and they almost want it to be hands off from the insurance company. So I think for people listening that are used to that, just pause on this for a moment and think, what would it mean if the agent who you're depending on, that is supposed to be the point of contact with the customer, basically took their commission and ran and was never going to be involved again? So to leave the customer with, you need to drive out and see us in person, that just seems so foreign. It's like, we have to solve for that, and the industry hasn't. So that's one of the things that you're trying to just fulfill that missing piece for.
Yeah, and it's also basically because in across Africa, maybe apart from South Africa and or probably one. Morocco, most of the countries have lagged behind when it comes to introducing digitization in the activities of insurance companies. So the whole revolution around InsurTech actually started in Kenya, and Kenya has always been at the forefront. It's like the place that everybody does their own testing. So you will see a lot of InsurTechs currently operating from Kenya, and most of them you'll find them within the ag space, because there's also been a lot of conversation around agriculture and how you can have a small scale farmer reduce their risk, due to weather and due to other environmental issues. So there's been a lot of push around insurance policies for the agriculture sector. And so the countries are now beginning to adopt new ways of, integrating digitization or insurtechs into their activities. So Kenya was the first country to change their insurance laws to accommodate insurtechs, and then we had Ghana also coming on the following up on Kenya changing their laws to make room for insurtechs like us. And then from there, we had Nigeria, which is the biggest economy in Africa, also following suit. And then we have I think the third largest country in Africa, which is Ethiopia, has recently also followed suit in changing their laws to make room for insurtech. So we are talking about 54 countries, and currently only about 4 or 5 have really adopted new regulations to make room for insurtech. So there's a bit of work to be done, but we have different partners who are working to ensure that all the countries that have insurance as a part of their ecosystem to really look at how insurtechs can help the industry.
Festus, what are some of for the regulators listening, or people who are compliance focused, what are some of the changes that have been necessary that some of these countries are making that have enabled companies like yourself to then push and to innovate and to offer new solutions?
Yeah, I think, some of the regulations have been there for so many years, because there was no need for, when they were putting regulations together 20, 30 years ago, to think about anything to do with technology. And so for regulators to accept insurtechs into the ecosystem, they needed to change certain rules around, the role you play. So for example, in Ghana, they've created 3 new segments for insurance like businesses. So they have what we call the innovative insurance intermediaries, which my FIG has applied for a license. Then they have innovative insurance product. So an insurance company that want to do anything digital can have a license of that nature. They don't need to have a lot of brick and mortar like the traditional insurance or traditional P&C companies or a life insurance company. They can use AI and all that to develop a product that suits the market. And then they have innovative reinsurance companies as well. So those classifications allow new entrants into the sector without necessarily having issues with regulations. But in the past, the insurance companies haven't stayed off, or the insurance industry haven't stayed off technology altogether. Like you mentioned, they had also introduced elements of micro insurance on pilot basis, where they bundle micro insurance with other products and services. So for example, in Ghana, we have insurance companies that will say, if you buy airtime basically means, you putting credit on your phone to be able to call, because in Ghana, in Africa, most people use what we call the prepaid phones. So you buy your airtime and you load it on the phone, and then you can make your calls or use data. So there's been some bundling in there, so that anytime you top up your phone with any amount, a bit of it goes into some kind of insurance for you. So if, let's say, you are sick and you are admitted to 2 days in the hospital, the insurance company comes in to pay. So there's been all those trials, but now they are opening the room, or they're opening the industry for companies that are purely tech based and are not really insurance companies. They are really tech or rented companies who probably are using different, tools out there, including now AI, to develop some insurance product that will serve the needs of the evolving customer expectations.
I want to get into Ghana in particular.
Yes, please.
because that's where you're based, it's your focus. But
Yeah.
beyond your company, you're also pushing a movement for the country as well, and to try to foster this with InsurTech Ghana. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you're trying to achieve, and some of the things you're doing with your event, for example, that are helping to move things forward?
Yeah, Brian, thank you about that. So Figtech, we're part of the first ever accelerator program for InsurTechs in Ghana to be organized 3 years ago. And it was organized by the National Insurance Commission with GIZ and other partners. And it was to bring together, early stage InsurTechs that had started working in the industry prior to even the law being passed. And when we came together, we're about 10 companies. Figtech was one of the, companies that was selected or won an award. And after looking through the companies and the ecosystem, I realized there's a lot of opportunities. But sometimes you need to bring everybody together, to make sure that at least your voice around the table is properly heard. And so we set up InsurTech Ghana, just like you have InsurTech Hartford, InsurTech UK, etc.
Yeah.
And it's a way to connect with the industry or the early stage business, and also try and use that as a platform to connect with other InsurTech groups outside the country, so that we can come together and see how we can help improve the penetration of insurance in Ghana and the rest of Africa, because we believe technology has an impact to play. And so I initiated that process. And I've been engaging with different InsurTechs across InsurTech Swiss, InsurTech Israel, and others, trying to see opportunities that we can work together. And last year, we supported the regulator in Ghana to hold the first ever, insurance technology conference in Ghana, where we brought together all the industry players as well as other investors and etc. to, first to discuss the whole new regulation and how it will push the penetration of insurance in Ghana. And we are looking forward to hosting another one come this year. And this year we are looking at bringing a lot more to the table in terms of, persons like you who are looking at the future of insurance and others, so that you can at least talk to people, those on the ground, to understand why insurance doesn't need to remain a legacy business, but they have to look into the future and how they can enhance the product offering.
Yeah. When you told me about it, when we first talked, it really excited me. And I will say this publicly, I really want to go. And I know I can't this year, but I'm going to try desperately to get there for the future events.
Yeah, I've told you. Yeah, and it's not only in Ghana. We're looking at, Brian, seeing you in Nigeria, probably see you in Kenya, and across other African countries. And you will enjoy the hospitality
it would be
we would
amazing.
offer you.
Yeah. But I do think also, I mean, so I love what you're doing for the local industry community, the connection with others. I think that's brilliant. And I do think supporting people having ideas and talking about them, and that's what we need to not make this a legacy industry. But I also really love I mean, I've told you, I'm a big fan of a lot of the developments that are going on in Africa around insurance, because I think when we look at the legacy markets, we're not seeing a product push that's going to meet what consumers' needs are maybe 30, 40 years out. I think actually it's Africa and Asia where a lot of those developments are happening. So I would love to see more people coming to these events from around the world and recognizing this is actually where I think the future is being developed.
Absolutely, Brian, you are on point. There is a lot of opportunities in Africa when it comes to insurance across the various, value chains. Just last week, Fuller Advisory, one of the, early stage InsurTechs that is focused on the agriculture space, dealing with smallholder farmers, working with governments to ensure that smallholder farmers have the right, protection when it comes to their activities. Just pull off, I think they raised about $24 million with the IFC investing in that. So it gives you an idea of the opportunities that is in Africa. We're taking it one day at a time, but there are a lot of other InsurTechs that are also doing a lot to make sure that people get protected. The environment is changing. Just last week we saw flooding in Dubai. Nobody thought about it, and a desert land. Africa, we've had our own. I think East Africa recently also had some flood issues, and all of this. Most people are not protected. So it happens, and the government probably will have to spend a lot of the budget to try and put them back in their right state. But if we develop a robust insurance industry with a lot of support and more and more people buying insurance product, then we will have a bigger portfolio, and the insurance industry will have, that strength or that capability to deal with some of these things that are likely to happen. So Africa is ready for growth. Africa is opening up as there's a lot of opportunities. And so those who are interested in looking at the region should not shy away from it. We have a lot to do. There are a lot of insurance companies that have been around for years.
Yeah.
So it's not a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's the InsurTechs that are new, but there are insurance companies that have been around for over 100 years, and most of them are partnering up with InsurTech. So there's a lot of learning from these legacy institutions for the new guys to be able to develop product that really will be ready for the future. So we look forward to more and more of engagements so people get to understand what is happening in Africa.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very positive note to end things on.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for making some time. And hopefully, I mean, obviously, for any listeners from Africa that are hearing this, A, they probably already know how much opportunity there is, and that's a positive thing. And B, they know, if they didn't know, they know now there is a place to turn to build more community and get engaged with it. But for everyone listening from beyond, it's really important. We should be paying attention and supporting these efforts, because I think we're going to depend on what you and your peers are building for the future of this industry globally. So I can't thank you enough for the efforts you're putting in.
Thank you. The future of insurance in Africa, and we look forward to hearing from all the people out there.
Yeah,
I wish you all the very best. Right?
Thank you. So good to sit down with Festus again. He and I had a conversation probably a month or two ago where he told me about what he's been building with InsurTech Ghana, with in partnership with others around, with the regulators, and what they're doing with MyFig. And I just find it so refreshing and maybe it's because the penetration of the market is not that high there. It's, as you said, single digits. The attitude is one of possibility and flexibility, and recognizing if we've been doing something for years, I mean, he said, over 100 years in some cases, and it's still not resonated or caught on, to stand in judgment of the consumers or just repeat what you're doing and waiting for it to grow, you're missing the point. There's a different need out there. There's a different way of consuming out there. And if you're not flexing to that, you shouldn't expect to succeed. Or maybe your definition of success is way off what it could be. And I think it's that mentality that is leading to some really creative ideas, some different ways of delivering things. And that's where I say, I do think it may be a few decades, but a lot of what we're seeing developing in Africa and some of the instances in Asia, like that Teresa Blissing wrote about in her entry in the Future of Insurance books, these are things I think we need to pay attention to in the more developed markets, because there is a point in the future where the base exposures and the ways that people consume and interact will be quite different to what they are today. And if you look at Africa, you look at Asia, a lot of those consumer and financial institution interactions began very differently from how they did in markets where people have been banking for hundreds of years at this point and buying insurance for hundreds of years. It's forced them to come up with different answers. And I think those answers will be much more like what we need to do in the developed nations down the road. I mean, you look at payments, and Festus and I stopped recording, and then he said some really brilliant stuff. So I'm going to try to sum it up. But people will effectively, like text, it's not texting, but text payments to each other. And they've been doing it for a long time in Africa. And M-Pesa is one of the examples that's very successful in Kenya. There are others in other countries as well. And I think M-Pesa may even have spread. I'm not positive on that. But we've only been paying with our phones recently in the US. Europe maybe a little bit longer, but still it's more recent. That is a seemingly minor point, but actually quite a substantial one. You look at this point where he said, the life insurance agent moves on as soon as they make the sale and they're not there to support you. Quite different to what we see in more developed markets where the agents really, they want to own that client relationship. Will that always be the answer? Will that always be the way that it works? What if it wasn't? What do companies do then to try to stand by their customers, to interact, to give the right customer experience? And what we say we're doing and we think is great, is it? Is it really meeting the needs? Is it what it could or should be? I don't know. And it may be today, it may not be tomorrow. That's where we need to open our eyes to some of the different things developing and not rush to judgment that, oh, that's a small market, or it's not as developed as we are, or we know better. Those are all really dangerous starting points. I say look at it with open eyes and open arms, suspend disbelief and reframing about what you think will or won't succeed, and just take it in, learn from it. There's a ton to do. And that's why personally, I really would love to get over to the event that Festus is talking about this year and in the future. I think I'm going to connect remotely this year at least. I can't make it in person just yet. But there are other events going on in other parts of Africa that if you're in the area, by all means, be a part of this activity. And if you're not in the area, find a way to get there if you can. I know I will be doing that in the coming years. Thank you to Festus for joining and sharing a bit of what he's working on with MyFig and Figtech, but also more broadly with the community. And I encourage you all to check it out and try to be a part of it and just learn, take it in. All right. I will see you next time. Great way to start another season. Thanks all so much. Bye-bye.